welcome back to my channel. If you didn't watch my video last time, I said that this week I would be doing something that I did have requested from somebody, that is how to do all the rides in Magic Kingdom in one day. If you haven't been to Walt Disney World before, it is a big park, and this particular video might help you guys out. Because it is definitely difficult to get around every single ride due to a multiple number of things. The number of rides that there are, the queues can vary quite dramatically, and some of the rides have really high queues depending on sort of how busy the park is, the time of year that you go. So there's a whole host of things that can depend on whether you're actually able to do this. But I have managed to do this over I think 2 days. And I definitely am able to hit every single ride that I want to hit when I go to the parks, although I don't always go on every single ride. However, I did a little bit of research for myself, sort of just based on my experience of going to the parks, how long it takes me to get on rides, the fast passes that I choose, and I have come up with what I think will work, including lunches and dinners, sort of a timetable of which rides to go on when, for you to try and hit every single ride within one day. This is based off the park being opened from 9 till 11, and that's not including magic hours, which you get if you are staying on property at one of the Walt Disney World resorts. You are allowed into the park an hour earlier, and sometimes an hour later, depending on if that's available or not. But you can find all that out on the Walt Disney World website if you are interested. So as I say, I'm just doing this based off a standard person who isn't staying on property and therefore has just the park opening hours in order to try and do this challenge. I have also included fast passes, and I'm going to tell you which ones I believe are the most effective fast passes to use in order to actually achieve this goal. So that's actually where I'm going to start. In terms of fast passes, you can book 3 fast passes at any one time. And you can do this, if you are staying on property, you can do this 60 days in advance, and if you aren't staying on property, you can do this 30 days in advance. So you can prep this quite a number of weeks in advance, and sort of decide where you want to go and which ride you want to go on. And if you're not doing this challenge, it's just really helpful because you can decide on what's the most important rides to hit. I also recommend, if you don't want to follow this exact plan that I've done and you want to change it slightly, which is completely up to you, I would recommend looking on the Walt Disney World app when the park is open, and seeing what the wait times are at certain times of the day. For me, I didn't actually do this morning when I was planning this because I'm 5 hours ahead of Florida, and therefore the park wasn't open when I was looking, so I couldn't do that. But based off just my experience in general, I'm going to try and tell you what to do. So I'm going to get straight into it with my fast passes. So for the 3 fast passes that I recommend, there is a mixture here of both thrill rides and very slow rides, but that just happen to be extremely popular every single time I've been. And they are Space Mountain, Peter Pan's Flight, and the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is the Magic Kingdom's newest ride for Walt Disney World. So that one still is popular. Peter Pan's Flight is a very slow family ride, however it's been there for a number of years, and it is an extreme family favourite, and therefore the queue is always ridiculous no matter the time of day. It's always at least over 75 minutes when I have been. I do go during the height of summer, so you may notice that there is a difference if you go at different times of the year, but especially now that they have included an interactive queue, this is actually even longer a queue now because people stop at the little sections that are interactive, so there can be a little bit of a build up at each one of those little sections. So this can actually make the queue even longer. However, I do recommend, if you're not doing this challenge on a particular day, go check out the interactive queue because it is pretty cool. So that's why I've selected Peter Pan as one of them, and thirdly for Space Mountain, this again is just a very popular ride, although you could pick between Space Mountain and Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin if you so wish. I've just picked one from Tomorrowland because it's works sort of based off the plan and route that I am going to suggest that you take, but you could swap it between that one because both of those get pretty busy. However, I think Space Mountain typically does have a longer wait, and this is something that you definitely want to make sure that your fast passes include. As a secondary point for fast passes, I also recommend that you book these as sort of early in the morning as you possibly can, because if the park isn't as busy, or it definitely isn't at capacity and things like that, all the fast passes actually don't go throughout the day. And if you sporadically do your fast passes, so you have one in the morning, one lunchtime, and sort of one right at the end of the day, you don't get the option of being able to select another fast pass once all your 3 original planned booked fast passes have been used. If you go to the fast pass kiosks around the Magic Kingdom, and there are some fast passes still available, and you've used all 3 of your complimentary fast passes, you can actually start to pick ones up. In this instance, you can only do 1 at a time, but you can keep going back as many times as possible, depending on how many there are still available. So this is something that I definitely recommend utilising, and I have included it in my plan, only because I had one ride that I could not hit within this plan, and so I've suggested using it as a fast pass, as an additional fast pass on top of your 3 that you already will have used. So I definitely recommend getting these as early as you possibly can, and obviously because I don't know what times you'd be available to get them or what times you would want the fast passes, I haven't included them in this plan, but they are still there and available for you to use. Just try and fit them sort of around as quickly as you can, and maybe around the areas that you're in, so you don't have to trek quite far out of the way to get to the park, to get to the ride, sorry, because this park is quite big, and if you aren't a fast walker like I am, it might take you a while to get from one side of the park to the other. So that's definitely something also to consider, because in order to actually do this challenge, you are going to have to get scooting around that park pretty quick. Okay, so once you have picked your 3 fast passes, and you get to Magic Kingdom, which I definitely recommend getting there for rope drop, so that you are ready to go as soon as the park opens. My first recommendation is to head straight to the back of the park, into Frontierland, which is sort of the back left after Adventureland. It's right at the back, and this houses 2 of the big thrill rides, and actually 2 of the mountains that are in Walt Disney World: Thunder Mountain Railroad and Splash Mountain. And these are the 2 rides that I recommend going on first. These get very busy as well, but as you don't have fast passes, I recommend getting to them straight away because the queue will be very, very minimal, and I have managed to achieve getting on definitely one of them once and one of them twice within the first half an hour of the park opening. So I highly recommend doing this and heading straight to the back, and also if you are a fast walker like I am, you can definitely get there before a lot of the crowd, which is how I managed to get on the ride so quickly. So they would be my first places to hit, and considering we are in that sort of top left hand corner of the park, I then recommend staying around there and hitting all of those rides so that you don't have to move back to them later on in the day. There is one downside to this, and that's Country Bear Jamboree doesn't open right at the beginning of the day because it's not as popular anymore, so that's something that I'm going to recommend you loop back round to. If I can figure out how to do all the fanciness of the video, I am going to have a map in front of you, so that you can sort of see where I'm suggesting you head to, that kind of thing. So once you have been on Thunder Mountain Railroad and Splash Mountain, I then recommend that you head into Adventureland, because as I say, Country Bear Jamboree isn't open, and go and ride Pirates of the Caribbean and Jungle Cruise. These 2 probably will already have a relatively big queue, and therefore I've sort of planned that the 2 of these together is going to take roughly an hour. And if you have managed to get on Thunder Mountain and Splash Mountain a little bit quicker, then you obviously have a little bit more time to wait in the queue for Jungle Cruise and for Pirates of the Caribbean. But I'm recommending that these probably will take at least an hour, maybe even more, depending on how popular and how busy the park is on that particular day that you are planning on doing this challenge. So those are my next ones. And then sticking into Adventureland, just as I've said, you want to stay in sort of the same area to avoid having to move around a lot. I then recommend just going on the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, the Tiki Rooms and Country Bear Jamboree, because this is literally just through the shooting arcade where the toilets are to Country Bear Jamboree from these 2 particular rides in Adventureland. So you don't really have to move a lot for these. And each of these, the queue will never be more than sort of the show length for Country Bear and Tiki Rooms, because they aren't overly popular rides. The Magic Carpets of Aladdin can get relatively busy depending on how many children are in the park that day, and also if it starts off being a hot day, you can get sprayed on that little ride, so it can be quite a good one to keep kids cooled down. But this one has never got ridiculously busy, and I think I waited in the queue for a maximum of 20 minutes, so I've sort of planned out for that, especially at this particular time of day. which I'm sort of thinking, based off my cheat sheet here, that you'll be there for around about 11 o'clock. So already you're kind of quite a way through the day. You've been there for 2 hours by now, but you've already ridden quite a few rides. So once you've hit these 3, I then recommend heading back to Main Street through Adventureland, and therefore being able to tick off the Swiss Family Tree House, which is a complete walk on. There's no queue, doesn't even have a queue facility because it is never busy, but it is classed as an attraction. So when you get back into Main Street, I don't actually recommend going straight down the street. I recommend going to the left hand side of the castle, just by Sleepy Hollow, the little quick service restaurant that does like chicken and waffles. There is a little shortcut through that goes right directly to the left of the castle, and will pull you back out where the carousel actually is. So you don't go through the castle, you'll go sort of to the left of it. Although you can go through the castle if that's something that you would like to do. And from here, I recommend going on Philharmagic. This, again, will only really have a queue that's as long either as the ride itself or the attraction itself, because it's a show, or at maximum 2 lengths of a show. It really never gets that busy because it's a high capacity ride. So you will only be waiting sort of 10-15 minutes at a maximum. So this is a really good one to hit, and also at this point we're sort of getting into the lunchtime sort of hours, and the heat is going to get quite hot at this point, so it's a good one to go inside for and watch, and it's also one of my favourites. If you didn't see my video last time, this was definitely in my top 5 favourite chill rides. I absolutely love it. I love the show. It's amazing. So I definitely recommend going on this one. And this for me is sort of the perfect time to go on. Okay, so following on from Philharmagic, I am going to suggest getting some lunch, but not quite yet. Just because at this point now, you will start to see just a slight decrease in the queue times because everybody is going to have their lunch from about 12 till 2. So at this point, if you want to get on any of the different rides that you haven't been on yet that typically have a higher queue time, then this is one of the times to do it, especially while there's still kids in the park. So I recommend here, obviously Peter Pan's flight you will have had a fast pass for, and if you can get it for this particular time, that makes it even more convenient for you because you're going to already be in this area. But if not, just hit that ride whenever you get the opportunity to, based on the fast pass. But at this point, I recommend going on It's a Small World because, as I say, children will probably be having their lunch at this point, and this is quite a family-friendly ride, and it is also a staple of Disney. So I definitely recommend hitting this one too. And following on from that, literally just heading straight past It's a Small World, you will hit the Haunted Mansion, and I also recommend going on this particular ride at this time as well. You will find that because it is the majority of the hottest part of the day, that this could have risen in terms of its queue time because it's an indoor ride, and it definitely does give you 5 minutes to just cool off. But as I said, it is sort of lunchtime and people will be going to get lunch, especially when Columbia Harbour House is directly opposite it. So you might find that people are in there and the queue has gone down ever so slightly, and I'm only talking 5 and a maximum of 10 minutes here, but it makes all the difference for you, especially when you're trying to do all the rides in one day. Okay, so following on from the Haunted Mansion, I've then suggested that from about 2:30 to 3 PM you can go and have some lunch now. Obviously this is completely just based off my experience when I eat, because I go around the park snacking all the time anyway. I don't eat a lot because of the heat. You just don't really get hungry when it's really hot, and mainly mine just consists of stopping off to get a multitude of different drinks, waters, the lemonades, ice creams, you name it, just something to cool me down because I really do need drinks constantly throughout the day. So for me personally, I don't eat that much food, so a 2:30 to 3 break for me is fine. But obviously this completely depends on the person, and if you have family members or other halves or friends that you're travelling with and they want to go and eat, obviously completely change this and alter it to what suits you guys as you're going around the park, because for everybody Walt Disney World is a completely different experience, and therefore don't just go off what I've sort of suggested. This is completely just something that you can mould to however you guys want to go around the parks. But this is just something that I sort of recommend, especially based off sort of the busiest time of year that I go. So following on from your lunch, something that you can actually do is continue to eat your lunch, but just head on over to the Hall of Presidents, which is sort of around the corner from Columbia Harbour House, more into Liberty Square, and is opposite the Christmas shop, just sort of for your bearings, and it also is just 30 seconds from the castle as well. So obviously I will put the map up again as I say, so you can sort of see where we are now and the time sort of that we're looking at. The Hall of Presidents itself, again, never really has a queue, it's just the length of the show itself. As I am making this video, the ride is still down, it has been from January, but I believe it reopens on the 29th of June this year, so if you are going on holiday soon, then definitely still include this one. As much as I used to hate this as a child, I actually love this ride now, or attraction. Again, it's a show, it doesn't move, just for its cleverness, and I just quite like learning about the American history. Obviously I'm not from America, so it's something I find quite fascinating. But this ride itself is a long one, not for the queue process, but actually for the show itself. I think the show is like 20 minutes, so you definitely want to include quite a large chunk of your time for this particular attraction. Okay, so following on from the Hall of Presidents, which I recommend will finish around about 3:30 if we're sticking to this plan that I've made. From there, I recommend actually heading back to the castle and back up that left-hand side little shortcut that I mentioned earlier, back into Fantasyland. And the reasoning being for this is that we did not hit the Prince Charming carousel, and I do have a valid reason for this. From around 3 o'clock to 6 p.m, you will see the park slightly drop, and I'm not talking massive, like the park is always busy no matter what time of year you go, it just is always the case. But at this particular time, after the lunch, and especially during the hot part of the day, the parents tend to take the little children off back to their resorts just for a nap, because they'll be coming back to the park later on in the evening to watch the fireworks and go on some more rides. So at this point you've got the chance to sort of hit some of the bigger rides, or at least some of the ones that little kids popularly go on. And one of those is the Prince Charming carousel. This one always has people on, there is always a little bit of a queue, but it isn't massive. But it's nice to go on sort of after your lunch, just as you're trying to relax your stomach. You don't want to be going on sort of big rides and things like that. And it's also again near to where we sort of just were. So that's personally what I recommend going on next. You can, if the queue is low when you first go around there to PhilharMagic, go on it then. Obviously, as I say, mix and match this depending on the time of year you go and how busy the wait times are. If it's a low wait time and you pass it as you're en route to somewhere else and you think that's never going to be like that again, just go on it and change the plan a little bit. All you're doing is just pushing rides back into different orders. So as I say, this is just sort of a provisional, it's not sort of set in stone. Change it as you will depending on how busy the park is. Okay, so once you've been on the Prince Charming carousel, I reckon that including a walk to Storybook Circus from there, which takes you through New Fantasyland and past sort of the Voyage of the Little Mermaid, things like that. I reckon that you will be sort of in Storybook Circus for around about 4:15. Prince Charming Carousel was at about 3:40. And from here, I just recommend that you hit the rides that are in Storybook Circus. Again, this is a very child-friendly area. It includes Dumbo the Flying Elephant and the Barnstormer, which is by Goofy. And both of these get very popular with children because they are primarily children-based rides. The Barnstormer really does hurt your back if you are not a child because it's got horrible grooves in it, but it's actually quite a fun ride, so I definitely recommend going on it still. However, this is probably the best time to hit it because, as I say, this particular area of the park will get slightly quieter just because the families are taking their kids for naps and things like that at this particular time. Of course, the park will still be busy, and therefore, including the walking and everything, I reckon that you'll be in Storybook Circus, especially if you want to have a look at some of the other things that goes on in that little section, for around about an hour. So, following on from there, I then recommend that you head back the way that I've just suggested you come, and you go to the Voyage of the Little Mermaid and Enchanted Tales with Belle, which are both in New Fantasyland and are therefore relatively new rides. Consequently, these will get busy. Enchanted Tales of Belle does have a queue because they can only let a certain number of people into the attraction at any one time. This again isn't a ride, it's actually a walking attraction, and you'll stop off at little different sections, and because of this they have to therefore wait to let a group of people through. So this one can take a while, and it also is queued outdoors, quite a bit of it as well, which can be really, really annoying. Okay, so following from the Voyage of the Little Mermaid and Enchanted Tales of Belle, I expect that this will take around an hour and 15 minutes, just due to the queue time, obviously the inability to sort of speed up the queue for Enchanted Tales of Belle, the walking distance from Storybook Circus. If you're looking around that new area and you've never been to Magic Kingdom's New Fantasyland area before, And also, just for popularity, avoid The Little Mermaid and things like that, although that one is a consistently moving ride, so you will find that that doesn't take as long to get through the queue, even if the queue wait time suggests it's a long one. But I'm anticipating here an hour and 15, and if it isn't an hour and 15, then this just gives you extra time to either look around that particular area or move to the next ride, which in my opinion should be Mad Tea Party, as this is heading back towards Tomorrowland. And it's just opposite Cosmic Rays and some toilets, I do believe. So this is somewhere that I recommend going, following on from New Fantasyland, and this is never a particularly busy ride. It's also a good idea to go on before you have dinner, which is I think the next thing I'm suggesting. Yep. It's a pretty bad motion sickness ride because obviously you are spinning around constantly. It's a ride that I don't particularly enjoy, but in one of my vlogs I definitely went on it because me and my friend Saskia had a go at this challenge, although we did it over 2 days as opposed to rushing around the park because Saskia had never been before. But yes, this is something that I have been on recently. The queue for me was only about 10 minutes, 15 at max maybe, because it isn't a large queuing area, and also it's not an overly popular attraction in comparison to some of the bigger thrill rides. So this one shouldn't take you too long, and I've estimated around half an hour. So around 7 p.m, again this is completely up to you. If you want to go earlier, later, then please change this plan accordingly, but I've suggested that around 7 p.m. you go for dinner, and for here, for the dinner service, depending on whether you're wanting a full or a quick, I've just incorporated an hour for this, because even though you're going to full service, half the time they never take that long in the first place, and quick service definitely don't take too long. If you want sort of a mixture between the two, I would actually recommend going to Be Our Guest, which is only sort of around the corner from Mad Tea Party, and this one incorporates full service but on a sort of quick service system, whereby the food is brought to you, but you select it before you go and sit down. So this is quite a good idea, especially if you're wanting to sort of do this challenge in as little time as possible. So, following your hour for dinner, I've then suggested that as a nice easy one to start you back after you've just eaten a massive meal, is that you go back to Tomorrowland, because this is the only section now that you won't have done. And to start this off, I recommend going to the Tomorrowland Speedway. This is one where you just sit in little petrol cars and you can drive around on a little track. It's a really good, smooth, fun ride, and at this point as well the seats won't be really hot, so it's not as bad to go on, although this does mean that it can get busier at this time because everybody has sort of the same idea, so just watch out for that. But I've never personally waited longer than 30 minutes, and if you see, again as I say, when you pass at a certain time and you notice that the queue is particularly low, just go on it and swap a ride out at this particular time. It's completely up to you and just depends on the day that you go. So following on from this, as I've just suggested, Tomorrowland is the only area that you now shouldn't have been in yet, or at least hit any of the rides, and therefore I recommend that you just do all of these rides in one go, and I have a particular order that I've suggested that therefore allows you to also watch the new fireworks show, because I know that's something that a lot of people will not have seen, especially as it's just been introduced, and in this particular challenge I've not included it because I'm assuming that you've got another day that you can go to Magic Kingdom. However, it's always nice to watch the fireworks when they are on, but it is definitely one of the best times to go on some of the bigger thrill rides because everybody will be in Main Street watching the fireworks, so the queues significantly decrease. So don't worry if you can't get fast passes for certain things such as Space Mountain like I've suggested, just head on to it now, because whilst everybody is sat there for 2 hours getting the best seat that they possibly can, especially for this new fireworks show, the queues will seriously drop. So the order that I suggested going on all the rides in Tomorrowland is firstly Astro Orbiters, followed by the People Mover, because at this point you should be able to sit on the People Mover just as the fireworks are starting, based on the fact that if they started at 9 p.m. Sometimes I think they do start at 10 p.m, so this just depends, as I say, on the day, and if needs be, have your dinner an hour later or head to a different ride again that you maybe haven't already done, or swap the order for Tomorrowland. But this is what I've sort of suggested based on the fireworks being at 9 p.m. So Astro Orbiters followed by the People Mover, which should take you to around about 9:30, because the People Mover has no queue. Astro Orbiters might do slightly, but I've never seen it to be ridiculously high, and certainly not at this time because of the fireworks, as I've just mentioned. One of the rides that I suggested right at the beginning of this video, which I do apologise because I know this is getting long now, was either taking a fast pass for Space Mountain or Buzz Lightyear. So I now recommend going on Buzz Lightyear during the fireworks display at around about 9:30 because the queue will be decreased. But I'm still recommending that this will take you around about 45 minutes because the queue still can be quite large, and also the ride takes a little bit of time to get around. And if you want to have a sneaky second go to try and get Galactic Hero, this might be your opportunity to do so. So at around about 10:15, I then recommend going on Carousel of Progress. By this point, all the other rides will start to get busy again because the fireworks are finished, or indeed the park will start to clear out. It just goes one of two ways. It depends on who's in the park on that particular day. Obviously, if it's a lot of families, they probably will just leave straight after. If it's people on massive tour groups, they may stay till the end of park closing, or indeed all cast members like me. I certainly stayed after to go and watch all the fireworks because the buses didn't take me very long to get to, and it also meant I didn't have to go with that ginormous rush that all leave the park at this one time. So even if you weren't doing this challenge, I still recommend staying after the fireworks to avoid the rush of trying to get onto the monorails, the boats, the buses, all the different transport out of Magic Kingdom to try and get back to the TTA or indeed your resorts, because it can be a nightmare. So just stay in the park and enjoy some rides. Carousel of Progress itself is a sit-down but moving theatre. Possibly one of my favourite rides. It definitely was in my top 5 chill rides that I mentioned in my last video. I absolutely adore this ride. It is my fave. And this one takes 20 minutes to get entirely around the theatre, but there is no queue for this. At maximum you wait 5 minutes just whilst they shift the building itself round. Obviously you can't go in while it's rotating, but it stops for 5 minutes, which is when you're allowed to get on it. So this one really has no queue, and therefore it doesn't take you too long to get around in a maximum of 25 minutes. I therefore then recommend heading to Stitch's Great Escape. This, I have never seen it higher than 10 minutes. I hate the ride. I only went on again this time because obviously I was trying to hit all the rides in the parks. It's basically a sit-down ride that Stitch is sat in like a big test tube in the middle, and he like crawls around behind you, and it like, you know, shoots air at you so it feels like he's crawling behind you, things like that. So it's quite a good one for little kids because it obviously includes Stitch, who I absolutely love. I adore Stitch, so that is its one saving grace, that I do like the main character of the ride. But this one really doesn't take very long. I think at maximum the attraction's around about 10 minutes, and as I say, the queue time takes about 10 because it literally is one big room that everybody sits in, so they can move people out quite quickly, and I think there probably is 2 rooms at one time going, so it's quite a quick turnaround, that particular ride. So at this point I suggest that you're probably now onto your last ride at around about 10:45, and as I suggested, the park in this particular instance would be closing at 11, so you literally have 15 minutes to ride one more ride. So I think I timed it quite well. So your last one should be Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, which is directly opposite Stitch's Great Escape, so there's no movement needed. And I have helped you here as well because you're not far from the exit, so I've kind of done it in full circle as well. So that should probably be your last ride, and you don't have to worry about how long that takes to get through, because if you are on the ride you're automatically going on it. It's just if you enter the ride after 11 o'clock you wouldn't be allowed on the ride. But you're allowed to be sat in the queue for as long as it takes. So that is the last one. Now you may have noticed that I didn't include a particular ride, and probably quite a favourite of yours because I think it's quite a popular classic, and that is Winnie the Pooh. I think it's called Winnie the Pooh's Adventure or something. And the reason I didn't include this in my walkthrough is because I'm suggesting that this should be your 4th fast pass. So if you remember earlier, I suggested that you are allowed 3 fast passes to book in advance, and then once you've used those, which I recommend using as quickly as possible, you will be issued a 4th fast pass if the park isn't too busy and if there are fast passes still available. If there isn't one available for Winnie the Pooh and there is for, let's say, Haunted Mansion, swap them out. Just change it depending on what is available, and swap the rides depending on But with this in mind, I think, and I really hope, that you should be able to get around the entire park, do all of the rides. It definitely will be a busy day for you. You probably will be knackered by the end of it, but hopefully you're able to complete this challenge and ride all rides in Magic Kingdom in one day. So I think that is the end of this extremely long video, but I hope it has helped. I am going to try do some visuals with it, so hopefully the video turned out okay. Give it a thumbs up if you did like this video, and subscribe if you are new. And please leave a comment if you are either going to attempt this particular challenge, or if you have any tips on how to do it better, or even if you actually take up this particular challenge and you do it the way I've just suggested. I'd love to know if it actually works out for you guys. The next time I go, I'm definitely going to be trying this one, and I'm going to be heading to that park for 9 AM to see if I can complete this challenge in one day. But until next time, I will see you later, and thanks for watching. Bye!